Football is finally back. Get in there.
I get those goosebumps every time.
I just have to get the big fella off the bench.
Could this be their last chance now? In it comes, Monster to the front! He scored! Harry Monster scored!
I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too numb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need that line to throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, find a rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Loaded Mag NUFC. We're here again. Football is back. Come on, buzz it. And there's no better way to welcome football back by doing the big match preview on away days. And I'm joined by the main man, Mr. Brandy and Blaze, in the house once again. Mr. Chris Hall, how you doing, fella? How's things?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah. Do you know what? The international break has been as depressing as always, although slightly different for me this time because I went to one of the international games. So I was at Wembley on Tuesday to watch England versus Italy. And as you know, Pete, I'm not the the biggest England fan that you've ever met. But I have to say, being inside Wembley was brilliant. Watching Jude Bellingham live was just unbelievable. Like he's something else, really is. And obviously seeing our trips playing was really, really good to see. But yeah, really, it was a really good game to go to be fair, and I did enjoy myself. So, but listen, you can't replace club football. You just cannot. So it's all about the tune, and yeah, good to have Newcastle back.
Definitely, mate. 110%. Yeah, England weren't too bad against Italy, I'm not going to lie. And that was positive to see, but you're right. Jude Bellingham trips. Yeah, great to see. Quality footballers on the pitch. And hopefully we'll see Jude Bellingham in a few years' time wearing the black and white. Who knows?
Hopefully. I can't believe he's 20. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
He's got plenty of time to wear the black and white, mate.
God, unreal.
He is, mate. You're absolutely right. And of course, we've got to welcome everyone in the chat. And I have to say, big big up to Nathan Page. He was in here before me in the chat. Hello to everyone in the chat. Obviously, our spanner and Tom Dixon in there already with a question. We'll get that to D when he comes on. The likes of Jason Scott. Les is in the house. Brett C. David Cook. Mark Todd, Gary V, all you guys regulars. Gary is back as well. Gary M, should we say, is in the chat, along with many others, the likes of Bill jumping in there. Mike, welcome to everybody who has come and joined and put their comment in. Connie as well. And Colin, brilliant to have you all. And yeah, if you haven't already, get your questions ready because we'll keep an eye on them. We'll star them and then we can drop them into D when he comes. He's on his way. He will be here very, very shortly. But obviously, Chris, you weren't with us yesterday when we did the show around sort of Sandro Tonali. So I know people don't want to talk about it. There's a few in the chat saying, "Oh, let's just wait until it's all confirmed and everything else." But just from your perspective, what are your thoughts around it? From what you've heard and from what we know so far.
Yeah, so initially I think I was like a lot of people where, I saw the rumours about it being poker, about it being blackjack, and I suppose I kind of switched off at that point. So I thought, it's gonna be okay, I think. And then obviously, more rumours have come out and they seem, a bit like they've got a bit more substance to them. And they are worrying, I'm not gonna lie. you know what, Pete? I watched the show last night with yourself and Daz, and I thought it was a brilliant show. So anyone who hasn't watched it, tune in because it is well worth a watch. And I thought it was really well balanced how the both of you did it, because Daz was obviously quite quite vocal in his opinion, and then obviously you had a different point of view, but it was nice because you could both see each other's side. And I suppose from my point of view, obviously I'm annoyed, obviously I'm disappointed, obviously I'm looking at it from a Newcastle perspective, and I'm thinking we've forked out all this money on this player and he's not going to be available due to doing something that potentially I say even potentially doing something that he knows he shouldn't be doing. However, the human element kicks in. I think I mentioned this to you yesterday. The human element kicks in, and obviously there's a concern obviously for Tonali's well-being. There is more to life than football, and obviously if this is something that's a real problem for him, then the club have got to do everything they can, and I think we as fans have to do everything we can in order to support him and not just jump on his back and criticise. We've got to give the benefit of the doubt, and for me, yes, it's frustrating, yes, it's annoying, and yes, it's disappointing. However, it's the position we found ourselves in. It's the position that Sandro's found himself in. So now it's just about how we deal with that and how we, how we support him, how we bounce back from it. And, he's still a young lad. I think he's 23. So, this will be another molehill or another mountain, depending on how you look at it, in his career. And he will look back, and hopefully it will make him a stronger person. And it will, he will realise he's done wrong. And I particularly liked the point that you made, Pete, about wanting him to sign a new contract. Whether or not he'll see it that way, I don't know. But hopefully he'll feel that way. And hopefully when he does eventually come back, he will want to kind of, make things up to the fans and really try and, help the club out, because the club have helped him out. And, as fans, I think it's important, that we kind of have the same attitude. It's up to us now to get behind him, not get on his back. And then it's then down to Sandro. It's over to you to, prove that you are remorseful of what's happened and that you're going to do your very best to make it up to everybody.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know if I did mention it last night. I also mentioned it again on Saeed TV. I was on earlier on this evening, so if you haven't checked that out, check it out. And I made that point. And to be fair, a number of on the panel, including Saeed, they agreed with that. It's about that commitment. We're all obviously disappointed about it, but at the same time, we will back him. It's raw right now. We've only just found out about it. We're all frustrated, angry, annoyed. But for me, I'm already kind of, Daz alluded to it, I was already kind of looking at the solutions rather than looking at the here and now. I was already kind of looking ahead. And that was a lot of my assessment. And it's about, okay, what do we need to do next? But what does he need to do next? What was really interesting is Gunnar Lee, Arsenal fan, very opinionated on all things football. He actually made a point. He said it could actually be a blessing for Newcastle United. And I was interested in what he had with regards to this, because he's been very vocal on he's not been very impressed with Sandro Tonali since he came to Newcastle.
A few people haven't, mate. A few people haven't.
And he hasn't been that he hasn't been that Bruno type player that we wanted him and kind of expected him to be. But he said this could be a perfect situation for him. And we talked about it a little bit last night, but he alluded to the same things. By the time, however long the ban is, we don't know yet. So it's just all speculation. But by the time any of his bans, when it gets put out there, is in place, you would expect a few things. One, he's acclimatized and accustomed to England. Two, he's speaking fluent English, because he should have had time to work on it. And three, there should be no concerns around injuries or anything like that. And he should be right prime in the positioning. You could even throw out 4. By the time he comes back, he should be hungry. And I alluded to it last night. He should be hungry and ready to prove himself all over again after this ban. It's like a turnover of a new leaf for him.
Yeah.
His secret's out. He's been able to get the right people to support him and have everything in place. And now he should be able to hit the ground running and be the player that we expect him to be. And that fits into what I said about, signing a new contract and putting your flag down on St. James's Park and saying, this is where I want to play. This is where I'm committed to. You guys have backed me. I back you. And I'm going to show the support back to you that you've shown to me. And hopefully it all works out. And that's exactly what happens. But that's kind of what I expect to happen. But equally, I still feel that we can go on and do exactly what we want to achieve this season with or without Sandro Tonali. We've got Joe Willock coming back very soon. And I still think that the midfield will be in a position where it can still be very, very successful, even without Tonali. And so, there's lots to kind of consider there and think about on the back of that. But look, we'll get into lots of other things as we sort of move along. But we're just waiting for D. He's just setting up, so he'll be here in just a second. Just another one. Whilst we're hearing, it's a question for us, really, not for D. So I'll
stick it on, mate.
We were talking about players last night who we linked with. Calvin Phillips. There was Andre Santos, I think, who's at Chelsea, the young lad. Yeah. I think he's on loan at Forest at the moment. But this is a link here. Evening, lads, from Mike Gent and Neves to Newcastle. That was the link today. I think they talked around a loan potentially coming back in January. What do you think about that potential there, Chris? Would you take it?
I'd definitely take it because I rate Ruben Neves. I think he's a quality player. But I wouldn't necessarily. I think people are putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5. If I'm honest, because we've spoken about Ruben Neves in the past, haven't we? And we've spoken about loads of Saudi players that have gone to the obviously the Saudi league, and there is a potential for them to be loaned back. I would definitely take Ruben Neves, no doubt about it. But it's whether or not Eddie Howe would want someone in temporarily. It's whether or not he'd look at it and think, well, do we want to develop our own? The likes of Lewis Miley, which I know you spoke about yesterday, or do we go out and sign another player? To maybe a development player and say, right, you know what, we've got Lewis Miley who's there and he's gonna be fantastic, hopefully, fingers crossed. Or do we go out and sign, like a 20-21-year-old, a raw talent, and try and build that player up earlier than what maybe we would have anticipated or expected to do? So I don't know whether Ruben Neves is the answer, if I'm honest. And plus, how committed is he going to be? How bothered is he going to be? Coming over knowing that he's not going to get a permanent deal here, he's going to be straight back off to Saudi. I just don't know whether he would be the stopgap. Not just him, anybody from Saudi. I just don't know whether it's a stopgap that would work for Newcastle, because our squad is so tight knit. I just wonder whether he'd want to upset the apple cart by bringing in someone temporarily who maybe doesn't have the same work ethic, or somebody who isn't as bothered, should we say? What about you, Pete?
I take him. I think he would be. I actually think once he play, if he was to come even on loan for Newcastle with maybe a view to buy, I think once he stepped foot into Newcastle, was part of the squad under Eddie Howe, I think he'd be desperate to stay. I do. I think he'd be motivated and desperate to stay. He'd have a chance of playing European football regular basis, maybe even Champions League football. Who knows if fifth place is available? But I think there'd be a determination from him to want to stay. But look, I think this conversation is going to run on with regards to Sandro and his potential replacement in January. The one thing I will say, and you'll agree, Chris, is that we'll definitely sign in January. That's for sure. In terms of bringing players. But the main man is in the green room. We're going to bring him in very shortly. And of course, on away days, it's only done right when we have the opposition's view. And it's a pleasure to welcome back D from the Back of the Nest podcast, Crystal Palace podcast. So let's bring him in. How you doing, D?
Yes, I'm good. Sorry for coming late. I've just been doing shows today just after work, so I was just running a bit late. Sorry about that. How are we doing? Thank you for having me on.
Pleasure. No, it's all good. Great to have you on. Look, we get it that we have shows coming up at our area sometimes as well, and commitments and time managing to fit it all in. So we get it, but we appreciate you coming back on, because I know you've had members of the pod come on and represent on it before, but I think it's been a while since you've actually been on with us.
No, I was on last time. You're forgetting already. Yeah, man, you're forgetting. I'm pretty sure I was on last time. Look at that. It's the Champions League games. That's just, you're forgetting about small clubs like Palace. Now you got the PSGs. Now you got the PSGs and the Milans and all of them. Like, you're forgetting about us. I was on.
My mind's clouded. I'm not gonna lie. Mine's very, very clouded. But look, it's a pleasure to have you on, mate. Great to have you with us tonight. And look, it's a big game. It's a big game. We talked about it before. 2 draws last season, 2 0-0 draws. If I'm right,
3,
including the cup. You are right.
Yeah.
The one that went to penalties.
Wow.
So 3 draws against us. Surely something's got to give at some point on Saturday, and we've got to at least have a goal or someone win the game.
Well, if we're expecting a goal, I'll be honest, it's coming from Newcastle, not from Palace, because we're missing our creative options. So, I mean, the positive so far for us this season has been that we've been solid defensively. Right now, joint most with Arsenal in the league. 4 out of 8 games we kept clean sheets in. So I'll be honest, a 0-0, I'll probably take it. And on our side, anyways, it's looking more likely that we keep a clean sheet than to score a goal. So it's up to you lot. If you lot got the attackers now to score a goal, then maybe the game changes like that. But on our end, I don't think we've got much of an attacking threat in this game, in honesty.
Fair play. But look, you guys, Palace, you've had. How would you actually assess your season so far? Because a few people, I'm not going to lie, a few people had you guys down as being sort of in the relegation zone. I know people on 12th man that you always have banter with, and you're always going to and fro with, saying you guys are going to be in the relegation zone this season, but you're not. Like, you're up there in the top half of the table. You've got some good records in and around you. How would you assess it overall so far this season?
It's been a massive surprise. Massive surprise, not because we're in the top half of the table, is how we're in the top half of the table. Being solid defensively is not surprising me in that aspect, because we have got good defenders. We know Roy's system helps these defenders as well. When you add Gahey and Anderson to it, then you expect a solid defense. But for me, we've had so many injuries, and I'm not using this as an excuse. And that's why I said, like, when it comes to like prediction, it's hard to get a prediction for lineup. I guess we'll try to do it if we have the time. But I mean, we just have so many injuries. It's beyond unreal. We lost Zaha in the summer. We haven't seen Zaha's replacement for 1 minute. It's been Jeffrey Schlupp playing down the left-hand side. With all due respect, Jeffrey Schlupp in 2023 going into 2024 is scary. And despite that, even my AirPods are going. And despite that, we're still sitting ninth. Where we've had Roy Hodgson. So we've had Roy Hodgson out for 1 game. So 1 game we were without a manager. We've had Elise out all season long. He hasn't played a single minute of football. Wow. Edward, our top goal scorer, got injured for a few games. Lerma was being out. Decore got out against Forest. Joe Ward, our right back, he got injured as well in that game. Funny enough, Schlupp got injured afterwards as well. Eze's out with an injury. Like, I'm not exaggerating. We don't have a full squad as it is, but we are just we've been like navigating through these injuries all season long. And despite that, looking at the league table, seeing Palace only 2 points behind 7th West Ham, is a massive surprise, not only to the neutrals, but to Palace fans. It's a question of now, what can we do when we do get these players back? Because I don't think we've seen the best out of Palace yet. And if we haven't seen the best out of Palace and we're still sitting 9th and getting, some interesting results here and there, it makes it more exciting. It makes it more exciting. Now, I'm not saying that, we're going to storm teams as soon as these players are back, but we will improve in attack. So how much better could this Palace side get? Because I don't think we can get worse than we are right now. I don't think the defense will change as much unless there's massive injuries. For us, it's about improving the midfield and the attack. And apparently there's positive news in the midfield already with Lerma and Decore, which is massive for us because Lerma's been out for a few weeks in this game. And, it's getting these players back and trying to keep them fit and building on. Because, I mean, every single week, literally in training sessions, there was another player out injured. We needed this international break despite doing well, because it was like beyond ridiculous how many injuries we picked up. We've only lost 1 in 5, but it was like we can't keep this trend going. So we've had this rest. Some players are coming back now. And hopefully we've looked at the reasons for these players getting injured, because for me, I don't think it's down to luck. You don't have that many injuries. And especially, I think there were a lot of them were hamstring injuries in a short span of time, just down to luck. It must have been something that's going on behind the scenes. And now we have to build again. So look, Newcastle game is always going to be tricky. It always is. We saw it last season as well. VAR, I think it was last season, right? Where you should have got that goal from Mitchell and it was wrongfully went against you lot. So it's always been difficult. You need a bit of luck against Newcastle, but this time around, it makes it, with some of these injuries, it makes it even more of a difficult task, especially in attack.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting because, and Chris, I'll come to you off the back of what Dee said. You look at that table, 1 point behind us. They've got a better defensive record than us. They're joint second, I think, with Chelsea on only 7 goals conceded. Yes, we're well ahead in terms of goals scored, but it's not the season that a lot of people predicted for them so far, including the injuries that Dee's referred to.
No. I mean, I must admit, I didn't honestly, Dee, I didn't know Palace were 9th. And then when you said that, and then Pete brought the table up, I was like, geez, that's a really positive start, isn't it? And I know you've had a lot of injuries. Like I was just looking then at your lineup from a week, not last week, the week before against Forest, and you are missing some key players, aren't you? Like you mentioned Jefferson Lerner. I think he's brilliant. I think he's a brilliant player. So he's a big miss. And yeah, your forward line, it's one of those, isn't it? Like as you say, you've got the likes of Schlupp, and really he probably shouldn't be playing week in, week out as a starting 11 player for you. But no, credit to Roy Hodgson, and your back line. You're absolutely right. Your back line is impressive. It's a solid back four. But yeah, it's that midfield and strike force, isn't it? But I'll tell you what, it's a real positive start, and to be sitting 9th, ahead. I know it's a bit of a funny season, but to be sitting ahead of the likes of Man United and Chelsea, it's not easy to do that. So no, it's been a good start for Palace, and maybe some Newcastle fans are taking this match for granted, thinking that Palace at home should be winning that, but who knows?
I think you should though, Chris, as a Palace fan.
We should.
Yeah, if you want to have a successful season, looking at our squad right now with the amount of injuries that we have as well, Newcastle should be winning this game. That's the one game you didn't win last season. So if you're looking at improvements from last season to this season, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'm looking at this game at home thinking we should be trying to beat Palace. But then again, a lot of people have slept on Palace, and I like it. I really do like it because there's no pressure on us. As you said, not when you look at the league table, we don't really notice, but Palace is sitting 9th in the league, which is good because we don't want that added pressure for us. We want to quietly do our thing this season, and so far we have done that. For me, it's about where we are after 10 games. But I mean, we've got some 2 difficult games coming up. But despite the next 2 games, unless it goes horrifically wrong, it's still a very surprising start to the season. And this is not the best Palace that you will see as well. With this Palace side will improve. Unfortunately, it won't be against Newcastle because we won't have these players back then. But they will, over the next few weeks, get more of these attackers back and use them. I mean, we haven't seen Elise for a single second. Forget about a second so far this season. So it says it all. And Elise, look, Eze's been playing, but he's out injured now for 6 weeks. So it's going to take a few more weeks. But Eze and Elise thrive off each other. So despite Eze playing, he still hasn't had, the guy next to him who he likes to pass off, assist each other. So all these, they add up in attack. And that's why we haven't been brilliant in attack, but our defense has been keeping us where we are right now.
And to be fair, Dee, any team would miss Elise and Eze. Any team would. 2 really, really good players. So I know Pete always gets a lot of stick for this on the 12th man, but keep that underdog status and enjoy it. You know what I mean? You can just slope in.
Pete loves it. Pete loves it. I mean, you'll be top of the league. You'll be top of the league with like 20 points ahead. People will be like, look, we still haven't won the league yet. We're taking a game at a time.
Mixing me up with Potts. Be cautious.
Mixing me up with Potts because Potts was like that last season.
No, but you're learning from Potts clearly because you've used his approach. Look, we're still Newcastle. Look, we're still trying to build something and all of that. Pete never. I know it'll soon come. I can see it creeping, but there's always been this. Let's relax. It's fine. This is where we are. We will. The season ain't over yet. I know, Pete, I know your mind games, but I know sooner rather than later, I know you're going to change up and start putting chest and start, bigging up Newcastle to the levels they should be. Because look, you don't just go beat PSG at home by that margin. You don't go to the San Siro against AC Milan. I know maybe you shouldn't have not got a point out of that game. Depends on how you view things. But you got a point in the San Siro in your first Champions League game in a very long time. And then you go beat PSG. Like, Newcastle are a serious team. Of course, at the start of the season, Newcastle there were questions from the media. I don't know, from Newcastle fans about Eddie Howe. But I think what he's done and the turnaround on 7 games unbeaten since then pretty much shows that Eddie Howe has grown as a manager. Because I've said it to Pete numerous of times. Yeah. For me, when he first joined Newcastle, my biggest doubt was, can he keep it? Like, the good times will be there because we saw it with Bournemouth. But can he navigate through the tough times as well? Because that was the one downfall for Bournemouth. He got a bit predictable. However, this Eddie Howe is different, and that's why I wanted to give him the props. Even though I kind of did have doubts for him at the start, I wanted to give the props because he went and learned after the Bournemouth, after leaving Bournemouth, and now you see it. Even if you have 3 or 4, not 4 bad games, but you had like 2-3 bad games, he navigated that and turned it into a positive. So that's what I respect. That's a good manager for you. So Eddie Howe's been brilliant. No, it's all great for Newcastle fans. You couldn't. I remember like about 2 seasons ago, maybe, or 3 now. I don't know. I can't keep up with time. But Newcastle were fighting relegation, and now we're talking about Newcastle beating PSG. And Eddie Howe has been, very influential to that, as well as the owners as well, because he's been getting the best out of some players even last season that were there under the previous management. And he's been getting the best out of them. So he's been a fantastic manager for you lot all around. It's not just money. It's not just new owners. Eddie Howe has got the best out of the players.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't ask Arturo Vidal on his opinion on that San Siro game, whatever you do.
Well, what did he say? I didn't see it.
He was like, worst game I've ever seen. Newcastle was set up, to get a point. It was pathetic. Shouldn't have wasted my time watching it. They shouldn't even be in the competition. Blah 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 blah.
Damn, jeez. I guess he's not a fan over up north with Newcastle fans. Then
really interesting though, D, is that after the PSG game, didn't hear a word from him. Didn't hear a word. He went very very silent and crawled back. Little cave.
At least in my bad would have been good, At least in my bad, after that would have been good. But that's how it is. That's how it is. Football. I always say football's a very toxic sport. I know people don't agree with it, but I think football is so toxic at times in terms of like opinions, and it gets a bit crazy at times. But look, I said my bad right now to Eddie Howe because I didn't know if he'll be able to keep it up in terms of for within the bad times as well as the good times, and he has done it and it's proving me wrong, and I understand the reason why, because he's gone and learned from other managers. So my bad, Eddie Howe.
Fair play. There's a question I want to ask you, and it's not necessarily come directly from me. It's come from somebody else. I just need to find it 1 second. I did have it.
I feel like I know what the question is,
and then I lost it. It's from Mike Gent. I'm just going to pop it on the screen, Chris, just 1 second.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
And I'm going to add to this question as well, is because Mike Gent asked the question for you, D. Anderson, how much? And I'm not just going to throw Anderson in there. Obviously, he scored at Old Trafford, your winning goal. A player that would be linked to it. I'm going to throw Mark Gay in there as well.
Wow.
How much? Because these are 2 centre-backs me and Chris know really well that have been linked with Newcastle over the course of the summer, and with Joachim Andersen beyond that. How much do you think it would take them to get out of Palace? That's question 1. Question 2, do you think they'll leave Palace in the next 6 to 12 months? And question 3, if one of them is to leave, who would it be out of the 2, in your opinion?
Good question.
Well, I mean, so how much is it for Anderson? I think Anderson, his value's been going up by the games that he plays, in all honesty. When he first joined us, there was a question mark over his defense, and there was a question of, look, he plays for Palace. He's a very, very good ball playing defender, but his defense at times cost us. This was at the very start, and then he naturally improved, and now he's a complete player, just like Mark Gay is. And Pete, we've talked about valuations on a 12-man podcast. There's been a lot of laughters, let's say, from maybe you as well, in terms of my valuation. But I'm thinking, even if you're going to ask other Palace fans, and even if you look at Palace in the past as well, Wan-Bissaka, a important player that was sold £50 million after one season, and he came from the academy. Joachim Anderson will go for cheaper than Guehi, I believe that. But I would be very surprised if it's anything less than 45 to 50 million pounds. Guehi now, on the other hand, it might sound crazy, you might disagree, but I just don't see Palace selling him for anything less than 60 to 70 million pounds. And that's it. Both of them two combined, you're looking at around at least 100 million pounds spent. And it's rightly so, because I think they're both fantastic defenders. Guehi now England international as well. Is like, I mean, what can't Mark Guehi do? And I said this on our opposition preview on our channel as well, and I hope he doesn't back. But he literally he's able to do everything, and he should be a England starter next to John Stones, in my opinion, ahead of Maguire. And yeah, I think because they play for Palace at times, they go under the radar, but more and more people are noticing now. But they've been fantastic, both of them too. They're great pairing. They're what you want from your defenders, and they simply won't go for cheap. And Palace won't sell for cheap as well, unless the contracts were running down, because that hasn't been Palace. Now, if you're asking me whether I can see them leaving in the next 6 to 12 months, so I don't see them leaving in January, if you're asking me that. I think that would require a fee that is way more than the normal valuation, because these are the fees I said for summer. Next summer, potentially. But as I said, you have to offer very good money to take Guehi or Anderson of us. I think Anderson is more realistic than Mark Guehi, but I think Mark Guehi will naturally get more interest. So yeah, I think we've hit the jackpot with both of them. Regardless of what happens, we're going to sell them off for profit, and that's what we're trying to do as a football club. So it's a win-win situation for us. I mean, if you use Anderson for about 40 to 50 million pounds, then I mean, we could use the same scout network and try bring in another defender, and hopefully they can try and match Anderson's ability. But if you use Guehi, that's going to be even more money. So I think Palace won't budge, and the players, they seem happy at Palace right now so far. Of course, you want to see a bit more ambition. I think that could play a part to it, especially next summer, depending on the manager that we got. But yeah, I think for Palace, they would draw on serious money for some of the talents that we have. And I think the Elise thing was a point prover as well. Elise was on a verge of joining Chelsea. We still somehow managed to keep him at Palace. One of the best news I've heard in a very long time. I don't know how we done it, but literally he signed a new deal whilst everyone was saying he was on a verge of joining, Chelsea. So that's how Palace are as a football club. We're meant to be a selling club, but we don't like selling. It doesn't make any sense. So if we're going to sell a player, then it's going to be for very good money.
Do you think that's We'll continue on with Alicia because you just spoke about him. Do you think it's inevitable that he's going to leave? Do you think it, come January or even the summer, that he will make that move to Chelsea or to somebody else? Yeah.
Look, if he was to leave, it doesn't concern me now, because I think he signed a 4-year deal, which is quite a long time. There might be a new release clause in that, but we don't know how much. But one thing I am for certain is that it's not £35 million. So let's say he did have a release clause of, let's say, 60 or 50, 60 million pounds. And I'm making hypotheticals. I don't know. We don't know the exact details, because last time we saw £35 million release clause got removed, and apparently it wasn't removed. So the details of his contract hasn't come out. But I know that Palace have made a deal which is going to benefit the club. Before, if we lost Alicia for £35 million, I would have been absolutely fuming. And I was fuming until we signed a new deal, because I thought that was very cheap in today's market for a player that got 1 or 2 less assists than Saka last season, whilst our strikers being Edouard and Mateta. I think he's a fantastic player, and if he has better players around him, he will only improve. So I don't see Alicia leaving anytime soon. If he was to leave, then it would have happened. Do you get it? Like, he had the opportunity to leave. And he had the opportunity also to sign a deal for a year or two. Well, he signed a 4-year deal. And the reason for that is because people look at it like this, and I get it. I do that with other clubs as well. Well, at least he's playing for Palace. He can join a better club. But it's about the environment at the club. I think the rumours that came out after Elise signed a new deal, it's not that it's just Elise, but the club looks after these players. There is a good connection between them. The club have brought them in. They have developed them into the player that they are as well. Because let's be honest, Michael Elise, before he joined Palace, yes, there was murmurs here and there, but no one was hyping him up like they are right now. And that's due to the club. And of course, staying in London is a factor as well. And I think they're overall happy. Even I'm surprised because I think, oh, look, we got Hodgson back. We got 1 year contract with a manager. We don't know what the future holds. But so, look, if Elisa was to go, it would be very good for Palace in terms of the business. So I'm not really worried about it anymore. And that goes the same with all the other players that's being linked away, apart from maybe Eze. It depends on his contract situation. That's the one I'm most concerned about. But even then, like, we'll sell him if he was, indicating that he doesn't want to sign a new deal at Palace. So yeah, look, overall, I'm not worried about these players leaving because I know Palace will hopefully sell them on for a good price.
Definitely, Chris. I'm going to come to you with regards to Palace. Like, we've talked about a few players, talked about the likes of Gay, Anderson, Elise. Some of those players that we know and have been linked with us before. But is there anyone else or anyone in that Palace team that you're kind of really worried about, that really stands out for you as maybe even a threat on Saturday?
I mean, to be fair, the two I would have mentioned would have been Eze and Elise. But from what Dee said, obviously neither will play. So that is a positive for me. Do you know what? And Pete, we used to speak about him a lot, didn't we, when we first got linked with him? Odsonne Edouard. Obviously he moved to Palace from Celtic with a really big reputation, actually. Well, do you know what? I'd be interested to hear Dee's thoughts on him. But for me, like, I feel like he's kind of always needed that run in the team. Like, he was a bit stop-start from what I remember when he first joined, and it took him a while to get into the team. And then I think on his debut, and Dee, correct me if I'm wrong, he scores within like a few minutes, and you're thinking,
he scored 2 goals against Tottenham. Yeah, coming off the bench.
Right. Yeah. And we thought, oh God, he's on the scene, and then he either got injured or dropped or whatever. And then I know that sometimes you swap him around with Mateta and stuff like that. But I do really rate Odsonne Edouard. I think he's a good player. So he's definitely a threat. And we've spoken as well, Pete, in the past about Tyrick Mitchell. I mean, I know now we're probably not gonna be looking to move for Tyrick Mitchell, obviously, because we brought in Lewis Hall on that left hand side. But he's another player that I really rate, and he bombs up and down. So I think I think he could cause some problems, depending on who our right back is, whether that's Trippier or Livramento. But I think that could be a really good battle. But yeah, I suppose the main threat for me would be Edouard. He's the one that I'm most nervous about, I'd say, come Saturday.
There's a question here from someone we know quite well in the chat, and it's Mr. Dash Shocks. Welcome, Dash Shocks. And a question I knew he was going to ask. He said, "Dee, please tell me Matheus Franca is staying at home this weekend." Now, obviously, heavily linked with us. We thought we were going to get him in January. It didn't quite materialise. And then he's ended up at Crystal Palace. Now, just talk to us about Matheus Franca from a Palace perspective. Like, how much have you seen of him? And obviously to Daz's question, like, is he going to actually stay at home this weekend?
Well, according to the murmurs that's going around, it might be the first time he doesn't stay at home. He's been staying at home ever since he's joined Palace because of his injury. But there's talks about him potentially maybe being fit enough to come to this game and be maybe on the bench. I don't see Roy starting him, but I think that adds a interesting factor as well. Look, we haven't seen a single minute of him. There's two sides of it to look at it. Look, he's only 19 years old. Our sporting director, Doug Friedman, really rates him, and he went to Brazil, tried all his best to get him. He ended up getting him. There's a lot of pressure on him as well as soon as he joined because of the price tag. It doesn't sound like a lot, but 20 million for a 19-year-old that, was, over in Brazil, hasn't done anything in Europe yet. It is a gamble for a club like Palace. It's not cheap. And you know what? He's come with an injury, but I feel like he's probably going to help him in the long run. And the reason why I'm saying that is, well, there's two sides of it. One is it's taking that pressure off of him. He's come to England, 19 years old, had time to settle in London, had time to, understand his teammates as well in the training ground, knows what Palace are like now. He's watched a few games of us, of course. We played 8 games. And he's had this period of just taking a step back and looking at what to expect in life in England. And I think that's massive for a 19-year-old as well. You know, if he just came in and straight away started games, it might have been a bit too much for him. He's had this, few months to settle. Now, the other side of it is now Roy Hodgson tends to prefer to play players that he knows that he can trust. And Francois, because of not having that preseason, he hasn't had any minutes of seeing him. I mean, at the start, Roy was referring to him as a Brazilian boy. That's how much he knew about him. Now he mentions him by name, but that it goes down to that. So there's both sides of the coin. But for me, because of the injuries that we got, I think it'll probably help him as well if he is fit in a Newcastle game. Maybe a little cameo, 15, 20 minutes off the bench, depending on how the game goes. But even if he's not on the bench against Newcastle, we've just seen that he's very close to getting there. He just, maybe if it's not this game, next game, that, we're going to see him sooner rather than later, because I mentioned the injuries, but on top of that, we lost Zaha as well. And Francois for now is maybe our Zaha replacement. So it'll be good to see him sooner rather than later. So yeah, look, Junior's his creativity. We don't have that in the squad. And if it is, then let's see what he could do. I don't want to have too much pressure on him, but yeah, it's exciting.
I want to get your response to the. We'll hold on to the Zaha, because there is a question in the chat with regards to Zaha. But Chris, Mateusz Franca, we've talked about him a hell of a lot. I knew Daz was going to ask that question, because obviously Daz has a keen interest in the Brazilians or the South Americans coming over potentially to Newcastle. But what do you make of potentially Mateusz Franca, coming and potentially making his first start for Palace? Does that kind of worry you because he is a little bit of the unknown, maybe, or you're not worried because he's not played a lot of football?
Do you know what? It's an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, D made me feel better when he said he's probably going to have a cameo, and it'd be interesting to watch him play. And hopefully, D, sorry to say this, hopefully he comes on when it's like 2-0 Newcastle or something, and we can just enjoy watching him. But if he starts, I will be a bit because there is always that element of unknown, isn't there? Because some players, especially on the debut, some players can really hit the ground running. So for me, he is a bit of a concern. He's a player we watched for a long while. You're right, Pete. And comes with a very big reputation. I think it was Flamenco. Was it Flamenco he joined from?
Flamengo, yeah.
Flamengo,
yeah.
So yeah, we love our Samba boys, don't we, on this show? And we always, we love Bruno, we love Joe Linton. So any Brazilian, we always pay particular interest to. Andre Santos being another one which you mentioned before, Pete, who's at Forest. But yeah. It's a little bit of a concern. I'm not going to lie. If I see him in the starting 11, I will be a little bit concerned. Can't lie. But even so, I would still feel confident, that we could handle him, and I hope that we would.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We're going to flip back just to the because there was a question from Tom Dixon. Do you miss Wilfried Zaha since he moved away? And obviously, look, he was so big for you and such an influential player for you for so many years. He obviously eventually left for free. And everyone else is not on the 12th man chat, so I was privy to those conversations with Potts and Lawless, because they were very excited at the thought of you losing Wilfried Zaha. But how have you kind of felt that you've kind of developed and grown as a team without him in there since he's moved to Galatasaray?
Well, when you look at the league table and the amount of injuries, I keep talking about injuries, but the amount of injuries that we've had as well as not Zaha, we've seen that we've coped well. We've also didn't have him for basically the 10 games when Roy was in charge in last season. So we haven't had Zaha for a while under Roy. Roy really hasn't been able to use him ever since he's come back to Palace. For me, look, he's wanted to play Champions League football for a while. I personally didn't like how long it took for him to make a decision. We went into late July. And there's still uncertainty, and then he ended up leaving while people saying he was about to sign a new contract. For me, being Turkish and also looking at the club they joined, is probably the worst case scenario that it could have happened. For me personally, I understand it because he joined Galatasaray. I do not like Galatasaray one bit as a from my mother team, Fenerbahce. It's like the worst case scenario, and yeah, look, he's playing over in Turkey, Champions League football. He came over to United, managed to get a result there as well, and he spoke about it as well whilst being there. It's the Champions League factor. He just wanted to experience it. I mean, as fans, we want to experience that as well. But with players, you don't have a long, you don't have a long career as we do as fans. I mean, as fans, we might end up supporting this team for 40, 50 years, but you don't play football for 40, 50 years. So with the players, he was having this tight window. Now he's 30 years old. He's got an opportunity for a big club over in Turkey who's going to be the Champions League. They've built a project there as well. And yeah, like he even said it ahead of the United game. He's like, I still find it surreal that, we're going to the game, Champions League game, we're training before with the Champions League balls. Like he just he feels like a young boy, just looking at TV and seeing all these stars in Champions League, and he always reposts it even now. Like every time the Champions League mentions Zaha, it's always on the story because I still don't think he's quite believed it yet. For him, it's a massive thing, and I respect him for that. Look, he'll always be a Palace legend. I just don't like the team that he went to. I was upset about that. But apart from that, look, we said as well. Steve Parish has said it. For Zaha, there's always a space for him to return. But it depends on the capacity, and even if it's not as a player. And I think one day he will most likely return at some level.
Yeah, he's missed the Crystal Palace, isn't he? Although he's not there, Chris. He's obviously been a big player for them over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's difficult sometimes, isn't it? And funnily enough, we were speaking very similarly about the likes of Bruno Guimaraes. Like we love Bruno, but we were speaking a couple of weeks back saying that if the likes of Real Madrid, if the likes of Barcelona, someone like that was to come in for Bruno, we know that a lot of South Americans, their dream, their pinnacle, is to play for the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid. And I'll be honest, if as long as Newcastle were looked after and we got a good price for them, like I could live with that personally. There'd be some fans who would be bitter towards him or say, that he shouldn't leave and stuff like that. But sometimes you've got to just take a step back and think, it's the player. You've got to think about what the player wants for their career, because you're absolutely right, D. A football career sometimes it can be cut short as well. But realistically, you're looking at at the very top level. Sometimes it can only be up to 15 years. Yeah. So for him, he'll want to play at the very, very top level and push himself and play with players who are in the Champions League and against players in the Champions League. So sometimes it is hard, isn't it, to begrudge them that opportunity.
Yeah. And look, he's enjoying life there. It's a different country for him as well. He's still got a young family, and he seems like he's loving it there, which is good for him as well. And as I said, look, it's probably the best time for us to move on from Zaha as well, because it had to happen one day. It just had to happen, as much as it hurts. And now we've got Eze, we've got Elise, we've got these other young creative outlets who, I think Zaha has mentioned that as well. Like he's basically giving the baton over to them, like they could carry the job. And I think that's why we're not as bad as some people expected, despite losing Zaha, because we've got other quality attackers in our side that could step up to the role and have stepped up to the role. I think that's why Palace were okay with Zaha leaving as well. It was not the worst case scenario in the world. He gave us his all. He kept us up single-handedly at times in the years, and now we've reached this point. It's time to go separate ways. He's benefiting, and we're also thriving for now as it is. We're not struggling as bad. I still miss him, of course.
Yeah.
I want to go switch to Newcastle. D, I'm going to ask you, from your perspective, who have been the standout players from the games that you've observed Newcastle this season? Who's been your kind of standout 2, maybe 3 players that you're maybe worried about going into this game on Saturday? I
think we spoke about it on our channel, but Anthony Gordon looks like another player that's getting transformed under Eddie Howe. I mean, we saw him at Everton, but he was never on the levels that he's in now. And I think that is significant. And it goes back to the manager once again. And that's about that I'm actually looking forward to see how we try to contain him, because he's been absolutely fantastic for you this season. Of course, Bruno Guimaraes, he's fantastic. Kieran Trippier as well. Isaac. There's a lot of players at Newcastle to pick out from in different positions. And I think you've had a solid start to the season. Maybe you could have done a bit better in the league, but I don't think it's been that bad. You're still in a very good position. And yeah, look, you got your right back, your attackers, midfield. You got threats all over the pitch. It's not like you just got threats. It's not like Palace right now, where I think our midfield is if it's Doucouré and Lerma, I think that is a very solid midfield too. And I think it's a very underrated midfield too, because from the limited games that we've seen so far and what we expected, they are very good together and complement each other's games fantastically. But we don't have the threats that you do in terms of all over the pitch, because we simply just don't have their players right now due to injury. So I think Newcastle, there's all areas of the pitch you can pick out a player and say he's a very good player. And that's why you are winning games in the Champions League. You do need these kind of players. It's not coincidence. So if you ask me to pick 3 or 4, probably Trippier, Gordon, Isaac, and Guimaraes.
Chris, some rumors going around that we're hopefully going to get Joe Linton back. Sven Botman looks like he's back for Saturday, and there were some concerns around Alexander Isak and a groin injury, but there's rumors that he could also be fit. How much of a boost is that going into this game, international break? It's coming at a good time, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
I know, I completely agree. I thought you were going to try and tease my lineup out of me then, Pete. I was going to say I'm keeping tight lips, But no, it's a massive boost because we've really missed those players. The likes of Wilson, the likes of Joe Linton, the likes of Botman. They've been a massive miss. So for them to come back, hopefully this weekend, even if they get placed on the bench, Pete, at least they're on the road to recovery. We've a bit like what Dee was saying about Elise. I don't think Willock's kicked the ball this season, hasn't he? So we've missed him as well. So having this international break has come at a good time for Newcastle, and obviously we've remained unbeaten. I think it was 7, maybe 8 games in a row. So it's coming a great time, and hopefully we can kick on and start off how we left the last break, before the international break. So I'm excited about the game at the weekend, and I just hope that we do get a positive result. And as highlighted before, I think there's been far too many 0-0s against Palace, and I think the way you described it, Pete, was we owe them one, and I think that's fairly accurate to say.
Yes, I definitely have been saying that. After the 3 draws last season, we do, especially at St. James's Park as well. That is for sure. Lots of people in the chat, 120 plus watching right now. Click that like and subscribe to us if you haven't already and you are going to consider joining the channel. Thank you for all your support, and great to see so many of you in the chat right now. Look, we're going to get into the match now. On the button.
I know. I was looking everywhere for a peep.
As it pops up on the screen. Thank you all for your support. You guys and girls are amazing, and you really do help the channel do what we do. So huge thank you to that. Now we are going to get into the match. We're going to start talking about some fixtures, lineups, and all the rest of it that builds into that. But of course, we need Mr. Lover to give us some love right now for these stats.
She say I'm Mr. Roll, smooth, just like a silk, soft and cuddly. Hug me up like a quilt, I'm a statistical lover. No take me fee, no filth with my sexual physique. Ya know me well built, oh me, oh my, well. Can't you tell I'm just like a turtle crawling out of my shell, gal? You captivate my body, put me under a spell with your sit on the fence perfume. I love your sweet smell, you're the only young girl who can ring my bell and I can take rejection. So you tell me go to hell, I'm statastic. Tell me doomtastic, touch me in me back. She say I'm Mr. Romantic, call me statastic. She touch me in my back. She says I'm Doctor.
Evening, lads. Well,
It is. Oh wow! Daz just continues to bring in different types of interest. He's gone to another level again. But Keith, Double Stato, Mr. Doom, Dr. Doom, should I say? And D, you might realise this as we get onto predictions. His predictions actually have been on the point recently, but past seasons have not been on point at all. So yeah, Dr. Doom,
for exact predictions and scores.
You are on a roll. That is absolutely right. But look, great to have you on. Pleasure to have you back. It's finally back football, and it's great to have Double O Stato, Keith, you joining us. What stats have you got for us this week with regards to Newcastle United and Crystal Palace?
Yeah, absolutely. It got loads of stats here, head-to-head stats between the two sides. Manager stats.
He's back.
Lots of stats there to round up as well. So coming in there, we've got Newcastle's all-time record in this fixture. Played 50 games, won 30, drawn 12 and lost 12 against Crystal Palace. Head-to-head record in the Premier League, 24 games in total between these two sides. 11 wins for Newcastle compared to 5 for Crystal Palace and 8 draws. Newcastle have scored more goals in this fixture, 28 goals compared to 20 for Crystal Palace. Newcastle also have the better defensive record in this fixture. 13 clean sheets compared to 6 clean sheets for Crystal Palace. Similar stats here for the managers. Eddie Howe's record as a manager in games against Crystal Palace. He's managed 17 games. He's got 5 wins, 6 draws, and 6 defeats. Roy Hodgson, his record in games against Newcastle, 17 games also, 7 wins, 4 draws, and 6 defeats. Players for both sides. Kieran Trippier, very much the man of the moment for Newcastle. He's assisted a goal in 3 consecutive Premier League games for the first time. No player has more assists in the Premier League than Trippier this season, with 5 assists in total. Trippier has created 89 chances from set plays in the Premier League since the start of the season, 28 more than any other player in Europe's big 5 leagues, and 8 of those has resulted in assists as well, which eventually have led to goals as well. Moving on to Palace, a few of their players. Hudson Edouard, he's scored 5 goals in 8 games for Crystal Palace, and Jean-Philippe Mateta, he's scored 3 goals in 8 games for Crystal Palace as well. Clean sheets, moving on to the goalkeepers. Nick Pope, he's got 5 clean sheets this season compared to Sam Johnson, who also has some good stats as well. He's got 4 clean sheets for Palace. And the general stats, there's quite a few general stats to round off. Since 2014, Newcastle have scored more than 1 goal in only one of their 15 Premier League matches against Crystal Palace. So they've played 15. There's been 5 wins, 6 draws, and 4 defeats in that run. 4 of the last 5 games between these two sides have ended in a draw, and 3 games last season ended in a 0-0 draw. So there were no goals in open play from over 270 minutes of football. I know. Yes. Those. Crystal Palace, they've recorded more clean sheets in the Premier League this season than any other side, and that's their most from the opening 8 games of a league season since 1993-94 season in the then First Division, and their most at any stage in a top flight season since 1979-80, where also they've had 4. No other sides have seen fewer goals in the Premier League games in 2023 so far than Crystal Palace. 14 goals in total, 7 goals scored and 7 conceded. Crystal Palace, they've made 16 substitutions in the Premier League. Season 8 fewer than any other side, and while they've never made more than 3 in a single game. And since Crystal Palace returned to the Premier League in 2013, they've been involved in the most 0-0 draws, more than any other club in the competition, 34 in total, in 388 games in total. Newcastle have conceded just 17 goals in home matches since the start of last season in the Premier League, and that's the joint fewest of any non-promoted side, along with Manchester United. And that rounds off the stats tonight.
Great stats as always. What you kind of sold to us, Keith, is that as in recent history, this is going to be entertainment central on Saturday.
It's going to be filler.
That's basically what you're saying, right?
There might be loads of shots, but there won't be the accuracy. So those games might have been thrilling games against Palace. I mean, I think there was some good saves in the game in January down at Selhurst, but as we're known, not the accuracy. So for some reason, these two sides just seem to lose their shooting boots.
Yeah, definitely. But we should have won at St. James's in the league last season. Let's not forget that Tyreek Mitchell pulled off.
It's VAR. It's not our fault. You're blaming us. It's VAR. It's not like we went and decided, yeah, you know what, we're not going to give you that goal. It's up to the officials. It's not. It
was a disgraceful decision. Like how that wasn't given. And to be fair, Keith, you'll remember that was a run of really bad kind of VAR decisions. We had a run.
It was
during that period where we weren't getting the rub of the green, but. Yeah, not great at all. But hopefully, we'll see some action this time, and we'll see us fighting on all fronts. But look, let's get into the lineups now. Hopefully, you can see it on the screen. We have the Palace squad. So, D, I want you to run through for me, in your opinion, who are going to be your first 11, and talk me through the formation.
It should be like a. We'll start with so do you have to say the formation now? So 4-2-3-1, we'll just do that, or 4-3-3. We'll do 4-3-3.
Cool.
But basically actually no, just go 4-2-3-1 because there'll be a double pivot. Just we'll make it easier like that. 4-2-3-1. Shall I go with the lineup now? So goalie Sam Johnson. I'm
going to ask you really quickly, and maybe
I wanted to ask this earlier, Pete. I know what you're going to ask him.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, is he now the number one, D? Or because someone in the chat mentioned it as well about Henderson, and is Gaita still there? Like what?
No. Vicente's left. He left over the summer because he was causing a fuss about not being number one anymore because he got dropped for like 3-4 games. So he left, and funny enough, he's now at a club and he's not starting there as well. But yeah, Guaita's left to go back to Spain. But yeah, Sam Johnson, he's been starting for England as well. Started one game for England, so he's been fantastic for us. And Henderson, I mean, he's out injured again. So yeah, he played 20 minutes. I don't understand the reason why we got him in the first place. I'll be honest. I get it because Vicente left, but I mean, we had other positions to strengthen. We spent £20 million on a backup goalkeeper. I don't know. I don't know the game plan. Maybe because Sam Johnston wasn't settled not at Palace, but in London. But now he's over that. He's done an interview. He's saying, at the start I was struggling to bring my family down south. Still has young kids as well. But now that's over him and he's performing. He's playing fantastically. Maybe that's why we got him thinking Johnston's going to leave. But right now, even if Henderson was fit, Johnston deserves to be number one. And he's our number one.
Interesting.
Was that what you were going to ask, Pete?
Yeah. That was exactly it. Absolutely spot on. So who's your back four? What's it looking like?
This is hard because I don't know if Joe Ward is back from injury. We'll go Gahey and Anderson as the centre halves. I think that's
so.
Pretty much
Is Gahey on the right hand side? Is Gahey on the right hand side or the left?
No, he'll be on the left.
Okay. I thought
Anderson on the right. Yeah, Anderson on the right. Mitchell as left back. That should be bank as well. Tyreek Mitchell has been, he's actually been on form under Roy Hodgson. There's lots of question marks about him last season, why he's dropped off, but he's gone back to form. And then a right back, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if he'll be out of them two. And to be fair, you would think Joe Ward is not a massive upgrade to Nathaniel Klein, but Nathaniel Klein, he was solid against Forest, I guess, but Joe Ward is still better than Nathaniel Klein. But at the end of the day, they're both not good enough for what we need in the Premier League. I think that's how I'll sum it up. But let's go Nathaniel Klein to play on the safe side because we don't know if Joe Ward is back yet from injury. And then I was going
to say, D, I'm very glad that you picked Nathaniel Klein because I had a cob on with Joe Ward. I think it was last season, because Palace played Everton, and I was watching the game with me blue mate, and I'm sure it was Dwight McNeil, and Joe Ward made Dwight McNeil look like Pele, and my mate was telling me how great the goal was, and I was like, if you watch it back, Joe Ward literally just lets Dwight McNeil go past him, and he was like, no, it's a great bit of
it's only
skill.
Dwight
I was like,
McNeil.
it wasn't. Yeah, I was like, it
that's the
wasn't.
problem. I mean, how many teams does Nathaniel Klein or Joe Wood get into in 2023? Not much. It annoys me so much the fact that we haven't improved that strength. I love them both. Look, Nathaniel Klein, he started at Palace. I mean, he made his debut, I think, 15 years ago at Palace. I think it was like yesterday to the day. And Joe Wood has been a fantastic servant, one of the longest serving players at Palace. I think since we got promoted, he's been basically our right back. I know Wan-Bissaka came in for a bit as well, but for me, we do need to improve that right back area. It's been our weakness.
Did you get Ward from Liverpool?
Nah, we got Ward we had Ward in the Championship. We got him from Portsmouth.
Oh, right, okay.
I
thought the player that was with you that you got from Liverpool.
That could be Martin Kelly you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, that's right.
Martin Kelly when Tony Pulis joined us. Yeah, but yeah, Joe Ward, he came from Portsmouth.
Yeah, that is the one I think of.
So the two pivots. What was that? So we'll have two pivots of Decore and Lerma. I heard that they should be back. Hopefully that is true. That's fantastic for us. The games that they played so far this season, they've been just rock solid defensively. And Lerma is fantastic in the air as well. I've been very surprised by him. I think it's a great bit of business. We got him for free, but it's not a case of getting a player for free for the sake of it. It's getting a quality player for free from Bournemouth. And Bournemouth fans were upset when he left because he's a massive miss for them. And you're looking even this season whether he could be helping them out if he was there because they have been struggling. And Lerma and Decore was playing one-man midfield last year. So there is a strength to Palace, if we're looking at Lerma and Decore starting there, because our midfield is technically stronger. Because last year it was just Decore in midfield for majority of the season. Now we've got a partnership of Lerma and Decore, and that helps us. That helps us massively in terms of the build-up play as well as defensively as well. They're very
Chris Keith. I don't know if you remember early on in the transfer window, we were linked with Lerma because he was on a free, and obviously it was a player that Eddie Howe signed whilst at Bournemouth. So we were linked with him, and there were a few people on social media, a few Newcastle fans that weren't against Lerma coming in. So I can understand why you see him as an important player for you, D. But how's the rest of the team setting up?
This is a hard part with injuries. Edward, we'll put Edward as like a 10 in front of them two. That's due to Eze being now injured. But yeah, so we'll put Edward there for now.
Yeah.
And then down the right hand side, we'll put Jordan Ayew there. And then down the left, it should be Schlupp, but I don't know if he's actually injured. I don't know the situation on him. We'll go with Schlupp. If it's not Schlupp, it'll be maybe Raksaki. And then up front, it should be Mateta. But yeah, this is not our full strength. I mean, our full strength would have Alicia there, would have Eze there, maybe France as well. And yeah, so we're missing basically 3 out of our 4 starting potential attackers in this game. And when you look at it on paper, that's not a great attack. But yeah, if it's not Schlupp, it might be Raksaki who's actually solid off the bench. And I pray to God it's Raksaki because I'm done with Schlupp. I don't know how else to say it. I'm done. He doesn't offer much. He does it. So at times he offers nothing. So yeah. But yeah, look, it's not the attack is weak, but you look at the defense and the midfield, that's where you see our strong points as well. So yeah, I think that should be the lineup unless there's a few more players back from injury.
Interesting. Right, Chris, I'm going to get you to set out the Newcastle squad, and Keith, I'm going to get you to critique it. Now, what you're going for, Chris, this is the big one. Lots of players potentially back, so there's a few to select from. And, of course, we've got the question of whether Sandro Tonali will actually be involved in your starting lineup. So talk us through who you think is going to start, mate.
Yeah, so I've had a little think about this. I'm going to come out with my usual comment, which I do every week, because I've also been thinking about that. But let's go with Nick Pope in goal. That's an easy one. Yeah. Left back will be Dan Burn. I'm really pleased to say this. I think Sven Botman will play left centre back.
We need him back.
We do.
Now that's not being disrespectful to Lascelles. Lascelles has been good when he's coming in and done the job 4 games in a row. But yeah, he's our best centre back, surely, in your opinion.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000,000%. And so it'll be good, in my opinion, and I'm hoping this is right, to see Sven and Fabian Schär at the back. I think that will be the centre back pairing. I've purposely left right back because my usual quote that I say every week is that I don't know whether he might start Livramento, and I'm going to say it again this week. And the reason being is obviously Trippier played in the friendly against Italy through the week at left back, and maybe Eddie Howe might see this as a game to possibly throw Livramento in, knowing we've got Dortmund next week. So I don't know, but let's put Trippier in. But I just wanted to highlight that point. Keith may correct me, and agree that maybe Livramento might play, but I'll stick with that back 4 for now. In midfield, I think on the right will be Sean Longstaff.
Yep.
I think on the left will be Joe Linton.
Big Joe back in the team.
Big Joe is back. Yeah, I do. I think Big Joe will be back. And the main reason for that is because who I think will be playing left wing. And then the holding position will be Bruno. Okay. And then left wing, I think, will be Anthony Gordon, who returns from suspension. I'm, really, really pleased about that. Yeah. I think up top, if there's any element of doubt for Alexander Isak, especially with Dortmund coming up, a massive game, which I don't think we ever thought we'd say, because if we win this home game, it puts us in a really good spec. I'm right in thinking we've got Dortmund at home first, haven't we?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I wonder whether give Isak a few extra days rest. And we know Callum Wilson's back because he came on as a late sub in the last game before the international break. So I think Callum Wilson will start through the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think Miguel Almiron will be on the right.
Interesting. So we have our lineups. Interesting how they're set up. Yeah, not too different apart from Edouard in that sort of number 10 role in and around Bruno. But yeah, interesting lineup. Now, Keith, just you've seen Newcastle's lineup. Critique it for us. Do you agree with Chris? Is there anything you would change? What's your opinion, mate?
Yeah. Some interesting points made by Chris there. Definitely think, obviously, goalkeeper picks itself. If Botman's back, if Botman's injury free, and that's the key thing here, pick Botman in. Yeah. I think Lascelles has done well in those games, hasn't let anybody down. But you want to go with you want to go solid at the back, and you want to put Botman in. He's just that difference maker, isn't he, at the back? Trippier is an interesting one, and I do take those points on board. What Chris was saying, if there ever is a time to sort of for Livramento to feature, get some game time, maybe Trippier doesn't play the whole game, maybe it comes on in the second half, then this is the game for that, really. Livramento to get more game time, get more ingratiated in the team, more integrated with the team. Midfield's an interesting one too. Sean Longstaff, yeah, happy for him to be in. I think Bruno, two of them work together so well, complement each other so well. I've got a question mark on Joe Linton, and it's obviously because last time he was brought back too quickly. So in my mind, I'm thinking Joe Linton. I want him to figure because I'm looking at the other scenario, and to be honest, out of the two, with the current situation, I still wouldn't pick Tonali because I have question marks over what's his head going to be like,
Yeah.
So if Joe Linton isn't entirely fit over his injury, I might be inclined to go Anderson rather in that midfield. But
that's fair.
I think Big Joe is the strongest in that position. So it's a question mark there. But if it's not Big Joe and if he's not fully fit, it's Anderson. I think you've just got to take Tonali out the fire at the minute because you just don't. If he were to come on and if he wasn't to be, if the game wasn't quite going to plan, then, what does that do to him, really?
It's an interesting comment. It's an interesting point. We've got 130 in the chat. Put your opinions in the chat. What do you think? Do you think Tonali should play? It's ultimately likely to be his last game. Craig Hope put out today that they're likely to wrap up his prosecution case next week. So it could well be his last game. He might not even be available in time for the Champions League game against Dortmund. So with that in mind, do you play him? Do you not? What do people think in the chat? Chris, I'll ask you the question. I'll give my opinion. What do you think about Tonali? Do you think he should start? Because, it could well be his last game for a long time.
Yeah, no, it is an interesting point, and I'll be honest, I did think about it, but for me, I wonder whether his mentality will be right, if I'm honest. And Keith raised a good point. You don't want to potentially throw him in the firing line and then he crumbles. I do actually think he'll get a really good response from the Newcastle fans. Will the Palace fans get on his back? If I was an opposition fan, I probably would. Anything to get that edge. And I just wonder whether Eddie Howe will factor that in and think, what? If he's only going to play one game, is different if they said, Tonali's going to be free to play until November, December. But I think if it's one game, he may be on the bench. He may come on for the cameo, as Keith rightly mentioned there. With a little bit of support, so he can feel the love of the fans. If it's if we're comfortable in the game, bring him on for the 80th minute. It can be like a bit of a goodbye for now kind of thing. But I certainly wouldn't start.
If you'd have asked me Tuesday, I'd have said he'd 100% started. He started back-to-back games in the Champions League and against West Ham, and he was on a good run of form. Like nobody played well in the first half against West Ham, but in the second half, I thought he was much better. And he played well against PSG as well. So he's building up a bit of form. With this happening, I think he'll want to play. I think his mentality will be ready to play because he'll want to leave a statement before he potentially impending his ban in place. I don't think Eddie Howe will play him. I think Eddie Howe will almost stamp his authority down because of what's happened and go, this is what's happened. You've kind of let the squad and the team down, although he's supporting him. But we need a team here that's going to get 3 points. And
we don't want distractions, do we, Pete? We just don't want distractions.
Exactly. I think he'll come off the bench. One or two have mentioned he'll come off the bench. Sorry, Keith, go on. What were you going to say?
Just saying, the distractions again. Just Chris adding to that as well. You just do not want to sort of create that as sort of out. Because really, one of the things I've been thinking about in the last few days is how's this impacting on the team themselves? Do you want to potentially have that question mark? I mean, you'll be assessing it. You'll be assessing how the players are responding in training, and I'm no doubt they'll probably be supportive in training. But if there's a question mark on how the team dynamic is on the pitch, I don't think Eddie Howe will want to upset that.
Yeah. Do you think there's a potential, Pete? Sorry, just before you come in there, do you think there's a potential, Pete, as well, that Eddie Howe might be looking at it, as Keith's just mentioned, from a mentality point of view, in terms of, let's say Tonali plays, is Elliot Anderson looking and thinking, hang on a minute, I haven't done anything wrong. Like, why are you putting this player in front of me who hasn't got and I'm going to say this very carefully before anyone jumps on me, hasn't got a short to medium term future at the club, in terms of he's not going to be playing football matches. Should Eddie be investing his time on the players that are going to be available going forward? Because if I was Elliot Anderson, I'd be sitting there going, well, hang on a minute. You know full well he's going to get banned from playing football. You know that he's not going to be available. And without being funny, I haven't done anything wrong. So why are you picking him ahead of me when I've worked my backside off in training, and you're still picking the fella who, has kind of, done the wrong? Yeah.
For a year.
No, I get your point. I don't think Elliot Anderson will be thinking that. I think, in my opinion, Elliot Anderson will be thinking, I'm going to play a lot of football now. I'm going to be playing a lot of football. So even if he doesn't play against Palace, I think he might think, well, this is his last game. So even if he does start, he does play, I'm going to be playing a lot more minutes anyway. So I think that may be Elliot Anderson's thought. But actually, from an Eddie Howe point of view, I think what you've said is absolutely right, and I think that's why I don't think he'll play him. I think he may well come off the bench because I think he'll want the fans to give him a nice send off. I think he needs that in himself right now. He'll be feeling low. He'll be feeling distraught. He's already been told he's been in tears with his family and all the rest of it. He's in a really dark place right now, I imagine, like personally. And I think he'll want to have that elation of the fans and the fans showing their support for him to be able to send him off thinking that I've still got support here. I think he might need that. And I think because of that reason, I think he'll come off the bench. But for me, Elliot Anderson, I'm not worried about Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson's played more football this season than he ever has for Newcastle United in the first team.
And think how he was coming into last season as well. Some of those games last season that he was figuring in Forest away, and that some of those sort of great confidence building performances that he can cut it. Let's give him the opportunity. Really, if Joe's not, and that is the big question, Eddie will ultimately make that call, and I would have Joe in the lineup, but I don't want to see Joe break down like last time when he came on for the 4 minutes. You know,
I think Joe's fit, Keith. I think he's fit and ready to play, but I think he's lost a little bit of trust in Eddie Howe because of the Brighton game where he played and he was like 60% fit and he was nowhere near the same player. But he told Eddie Howe that he was fit and ready to play. I think at that point now, I think there's maybe a little bit of caution there with Eddie Howe. And Elliot Anderson hasn't been playing bad. He didn't have the greatest game against West Ham, but he hasn't been playing bad. And so that's the alternative option. But I think there's maybe more chance that Joe Linton starts in comparison to Tonali. But Dia, I just want to get your opinion on that. What would you do in that situation? If that was one of the Palace players and you knew they had an impending ban and it was a player, newly signed player, like a Lerma, for example, looking at your squad right now, it was a Lerma. Would you play them knowing that, or would you be happy to play them knowing that they had a ban that could be for a long period of time? What would you do in that situation?
Yeah, I would play him if he's in a right frame of mind. Why not play your best players? But that's a big if he's in a right frame of mind. If he is, then that's one more game to get out of Tonali. It's a game that you must be looking to try and win. So I would play my best player. I think that's how I see it. If it was Lerma or Decore or any other player, yes, he might be getting banned, but Anderson will get his moments. For now, Tonali is the better player, so you just play him for the game if he's ready for it.
Okay, so just from a Palace point of view, where do you think you can get in at Newcastle? Where do you think you can cause problems? Where do you think you can make the difference?
An attack. That's a question that I don't think many Palace. I mean, look at our front four, and it's very hard. I genuinely don't know.
Well, there's a lot of height here.
Yeah, there is height there, but if Bomber's playing
from these areas here, so like you've got pace in and behind. Obviously, Dan Burn. We say it every week, don't we, Chris Keith? We say, oh, the winger's got pace on Dan Burn. It's a worry. It never ends up being the case, but you know, there's pace there. Schlupp's got a lot of pace in and behind. Like you said, he's not got the final ball, but he's got a lot of pace in there. You know,
it'll be way more dangerous.
The one for you, D, is the height.
I hope he plays Raksaki instead of Schlupp if Schlupp is fit, because then there is danger there. Because I think the reason for that is Schlupp just has pace, but the end product ain't great in terms of crossing anyways. So it's just pointless. Yes, I think height could be a factor, but then when I look at your defense, I think your defense could combat that, and I don't think it should be much of a problem. Probably Jordan Ayew. Ayew's actually had a very solid start to the season in terms of production. He's big game assists this season, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. And he loves to win a foul as well. He's such a clever footballer, very annoying to play against. So maybe down our right-hand side. But if Raksaki plays, then I think it'll be our wide areas. I think right now I have faith in Ayew, but Schlupp, no. If Raksaki does, then I think we could try hurt you out wide. But then again, you got Kieran Trippier, who's a fantastic player. And I'm pretty sure we will set up in a way to make sure Trippier doesn't run up the pitch and get an assist, because we do know obviously attacking threat as well. So even with our attacking options, we'll try to think of it as defensively as possible as well, to try and make sure that, you know, Trippier or Dan Burn ain't getting forward, or any of these midfielders run behind our defense. So yeah, look, as I said, give me the point. I'll be happy with that, because we don't have much going forward.
Do any of these boys get forward?
Potentially, we could see one of them getting forward. I think we will need to. Maybe it could be they could switch up. Sometimes the Corey's sitting. Maybe it could be Lerma that's getting forward, and maybe we have missed that a bit. But then again, I'm just thinking about playing Newcastle at St James's Park, when that place will be rocking. It's a massive game for you lot as well. I don't know if Roy will be willing to take that risk. For Palace, it's a case of don't concede in the first half. We don't normally score goals in the first half. When I say normally, it's very rare that we score goals in the first half. So it's about keeping tight in the first half. In the second half, maybe we might try to get at you a bit more, especially if it's 0-0. But yeah, maybe you can see Lerma getting forward. But then again, I don't know how much they'll be willing to risk it in this game.
Interesting. Chris, from your opinion, where do you think we're going to win the game?
I think the midfield, and you know, obviously, I've said beforehand, you know, that I really like Decore and Lerma particularly. So I think having the Palace having those two back is gonna cause us problems. I think we're gonna have problems breaking Palace down. That's going to be, you know, the difficulty for us. Wouldn't surprise me if it stayed 0-0 for a good 30, 40 minutes, maybe even the first half. But then I think eventually we will break them down. Interested to see, you know, obviously what Keith was saying about whether that's Joe Linton or Elliot Anderson playing in the middle. Ideally, I'd like it to be Joe Linton, but, you know, not that I've got a problem with Elliot Anderson. I absolutely haven't. I think the key for me is going to be on the left-hand side with Anthony Gordon. I think Anthony Gordon's going to come back with the bit between his teeth. Dee's already mentioned, you know, that the right back position isn't probably the strongest for Palace. So I think if Anthony Gordon's bang up for it and he comes back, you know, wanting to make an impression, we know what the atmosphere is like at St James's Park these days. If Anthony Gordon can get some joy down that left-hand side, I think it could cause all kinds of problems. And let's not forget, if it is Callum Wilson that starts up front as well, Callum Wilson will want to come back and try and cement his place in the starting 11. And I know a few people in the chat have said that if Isaac's fit, he'll start. I do think with this busy festive period coming up, it wouldn't surprise me if both Isaac and Wilson stayed fit, that we reverted to Wilson being in the Premier League games and Isaac being in the Champions League games, particularly if you know, we continue to do well in the Champions League, because, you know, if we manage to beat Dortmund next week, if we then go, you know, over to Germany and we manage to get a point or even possibly win in Dortmund, you know, we're going to really want to solidify and keep the players as fresh as we possibly can. So for me, I think the problems for Palace certainly are going to be down that left-hand side, and I think that's where we'll get most of our joy, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Keith, anything to add on that?
Totally agree. I think agree with the points that have been raised. I think Bruno will be up for this game. Intensity in that middle of the block, and just see Bruno being fired up for this game. You know, this sort of situation, what's happened off the pitch, will just be one of those things. I think that could fire up the likes of Bruno, and he could really be red hot in this game. And I agree with the points raised about Gordon coming back into the side as well, given the form that Gordon was in pre his one match ban down that right hand side, Miggy on the left, you know, Miggy on the other side, sorry, and that'll be those are the key areas for me in this game.
I think the key areas for me are here with regards to Mateta and Edouard. Mateta's the type of striker that Botman and Cher love to play against. Is that what you don't get from him, and correct me if I'm wrong, D, is that you don't see him making these runs into channels. You don't see him kind of making those runs into those areas that are going to pull defenders all over the place. What he likes to do is big and physical. So he likes to win balls in the air, hold the ball up. People like Botman and Shaw, they love that. Botman will attack him. Shaw will sweep. I think if we can keep that quiet, that'll be a big thing for us. Now, we will. In my opinion, I think we'll hold a lot of possession. So it'll be down to what Bruno does, what Joe Linton does, what Longstaff does with the high press. Can we pen these boys back into here? If we can pen these boys back into this position and nullify their attacking intent, if we can pull these guys back and make them think more about defending than actually attacking, that for me is the key in those areas. And Chris, I agree with you. I think these two going up against each other, Gordon and Klein, is key. But I also think Almiron has had the beating of Mitchell in previous games as well. So I think either side could be the key in this situation. Dan Burn's going to sit deep. He's going to try and keep hold of Jordan Ayew. Trippier's going to get forward, and it's about whether Schlupp tracks that run, because Almiron and Trippier together are lethal down that right-hand side. I'm not sure whether Isak's going to start.
I was going to ask you this, Pete. What are your thoughts on the lineup? Like, I know Keith mentioned about Elliot Anderson in the middle instead of Joe Linton, and also Wilson. They were the key ones, I think.
You know my opinion, Chris, about Isak. He's our number one striker. And someone put in the chat, if he's fit, he plays. And I'm of that mindset now that after that West Ham game, that I think Eddie Howe is fully sold on Isak now. And I've just got a feeling that if he's fully over his groin injury, he'll play. If they're wanting to keep an eye on him with an eye on Dortmund, like you said, I think they'll start Wilson. I think it depends on Isak. I think Wilson's fully fit, but I think a lot of it depends on how fit Isak is. I think if Isak's fit, he'll play. If Wilson starts, I'm not bothered by it because he's a goal scorer. Like he's had a good start to the season. And I think physically, he can dominate these two or cause a problem for these two where we get other players running in, because you're going to get Joe Linton running in there. You're going to get Gordon in here. You're going to get Miggy in there. Okay, Bruno will come into this position and try and dominate there on the edge of the box. You're going to get lots of different positions that these guys are going to take up. And I mentioned it before, possession is key. We've had a lot of possession against teams this season, a lot of possession. And I think that could be the difference here in this game in particular. But Botman, Joe Linton back, Wilson back in the team, Gordon back from suspension is going to be crucial. I think if we get the first goal, I think we win the game, because I think we'll be in a position where we can really go on and dominate. But that's kind of how I see it, really. I don't know if you guys have got anything to add, both from a Palace side or a Newcastle side, before we move on.
No, I think we covered it perfectly. I think it's down our right-hand side. I think Gordon and Klein is the battle to watch out for. And yeah, I think we covered everything in terms of the lineup, the strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, agree.
Spot on. Right. Have we got a couple of questions before we get to predictions?
Yeah, we absolutely have, mate. Yeah, we've got there was one question I particularly loved, and I thought, we'll have to definitely ask D that one. Hang on a minute. I liked this one from Tom Dixon. He says, D, what is the hardest team you've played so far this season?
That's a very good question. The hardest team that we played so far this season. Probably it's either, I don't know. I don't want to forget about team. Hold on, let me look at results. I'm thinking right now maybe Arsenal, because we couldn't break them down. But then again, they only beat us by a penalty, 1-0. So it wasn't absolutely awful. Villa, I mean, the less I talk about the ref, the better it is. Was winning that game until like the 93rd minute. It wasn't as difficult as I expected. I don't like, without sounding too big-headed, I genuinely don't know who was our hardest team. Probably Arsenal. Probably say Arsenal. Like, apart from Arsenal, we faced Man United in the cup and lost to them 3-0, but that was with our B team. So Arsenal has probably the most difficult game that faced.
Yeah. Mike Genta asks, D, as and when Roy retires, who do you think Palace will go for as manager?
It's very hard to say. Well, I do know that this should be Roy's last year. That's pretty set on. But in terms of manager, we don't even know who will be in a job, out of a job next summer. I mean, we're still in 2023, so it's very hard to say by then.
Still in the chat,
but it won't be Gareth Southgate. No, it won't be Gareth. I hope it's not Gareth Southgate. I just, yeah, me and Southgate, we just don't get along. Let's just say that. Even though he has Palace links. Yeah, I hope to God it's not Southgate because that I'd rather just keep Roy Hodgson. But yeah, it's very hard to say. I don't want to put names out there because we had the opportunities of Graham Potter this summer and, you know, a few of these other managers out of job, but we want to stick with Hodgson. So it depends on where the club are at next summer and who's available, to be fair.
You wouldn't take a Man United legend from Cramlington, would you, D? Who's currently doing the rounds on the podcast circuit?
So what? Who exactly?
Steve Bruce.
Oh, geez, Steve Bruce. I mean, you lot must think Crystal Palace. You're probably Crystal Palace of, like, I don't know, with respect Sheffield United. Like, we've been in the Premier League for 10 years. I mean, if we get Steve Bruce, then that'd be pretty incredible. 100% not. 100% not. I've seen Steve Bruce at Newcastle. I went through all the comments week in, week out. I remember the times, and yeah, I don't think Palace are that ready to have Steve Bruce as a manager. We might as well just call it a day if Steve Bruce is our manager.
I've got two more for you. D. So the first one is, I like this one, and this is actually a question for everyone. Actually, where would you rank Eze among the best players not playing for the Cartel or NUFC? I like the way you've said the Cartel or NUFC there, Michael Pomar. For me, he's right at the top. Where would you rank him, D, in terms of, you know, you've got your elite players, if you like, or the players, you know, who are deemed elite, should we say? Where you know, the best 11 outside of the top 6, 7, 8, whatever it may be. Would you say Eze gets in that squad?
Yeah, he does. He's a brilliant footballer. And he thrives off Elise as well. But just overall, he's dribbling, he's playmaking. I just love him. It's one of those players you just love to watch. In a game which is full of tactics, he kind of breaks that narrative and does his own thing. He has that freedom, and you like to see players with a bit more freedom, having that skill to be on a player as well. So I think he's up there outside the top 6, and he's been linked with a few clubs as well. And that's not going to go away because I think he's a fantastic footballer in terms of his creativity.
I'm gonna frame it slightly differently for Pete and Keith because I'm sure they'll probably agree that Eze is definitely up there. But Pete and Keith, just one word answer. Newcastle get the opportunity to sign Elise or Eze. Which one are you taking?
You can't do that. One word answer. Let me to give you a one word answer.
Yeah.
Go on, Keith, you go first, mate.
A one-word answer to saying one, the other, or either.
You can only pick Eze or Elise for Newcastle to sign. You've got the opportunity to sign Eze or Elise. Forget money. Which one would you pick?
Can't do it in one word. Eze. Expand on it. I've always liked Eze. You know, for the last couple of years. You know, the attacking threat he brings. You know, I always thought he linked up well with, you know, some of the work that Zaha was doing as well. You know, I never thought I'd see Zaha leave Palace, and a bit of a shame when he did. So, yeah, it would be Eze out of the two.
Pete?
One word, both. That's not one word. I'll be honest with you, and this is not one word, but I was going to say it anyway. When we lost out on Maddison, Eze was the guy that I wanted as an alternative. I think he's a tremendous player. Really, really good player. Elise, perfect Miggy Almiron replacement. He gives you final ball. He gives you finishing ability, set pieces, crosses, balls into the box. Everything that Miggy Almiron doesn't give you, he gives you in abundance. And the assists that Dean talked about last season, imagine that in this Newcastle team on the right-hand side. We're laughing, mate. I can't choose. I'm not going to choose. Because I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to keep it.
Okay.
I'm going to be a keep. I'm going to be a
for England as well, hasn't he? He's been breaking through a bit for England now as well.
Yeah.
You know what?
I mean, me personally, I'd pick Eze. It's a close one, but I would pick Eze, me personally. And then the last question for D, and it's a nice way to round up this, actually. Brett C asks, D, what was a successful season for Palace look like?
I think top 10 is the aim. It might sound a bit ambitious, but that is the aim. Roy said it even before the start of the season. So I think a successful season would be top 10. But I'm in a mind frame of taking a game at a time. Like I'm not. We'll talk about top 10 also, but I just should take a game at a time and see where we end up. I mean, we're 8 games in, we're 9th right now. We could easily drop down the table, or we can go higher up as well if we get results our way. I mean, it's still very tight. So Palace have been the biggest surprise, even as a Palace fan, watching this team play this season. But a successful season, if we're looking at metrics, probably will be top 10. That's the aim for the club anyways when Hodgson signed a new deal.
Yeah, that's fair.
Why not? Why not go for it? If you can finish above Chelsea, Man United this season, massive.
That's it. It'll be very hard. It'll be very hard to do. But yeah, I think last year Fulham was in the top 10, well 10th. So it depends. Like that's what I'm saying. Look, we're just taking a game at a time. We'll see where we end up. We're not putting massive pressure on us, but yeah.
D, sorry, I've got to squeeze one more in here because it's just been put
nice.
in the chat and it's an interesting one. And I think Potts would be interested to hear your answer to this one as well. The Mighty Win says, Eze or Saka?
Oh, Eze, 100%. No, I'm joking. Saka's been brilliant, but I've said it many times with Arsenal, with how they treat Saka. I mean, he plays a lot of games. I'm worried for Saka's sake if he's going to get burnt out or not, because the guy barely has any rest and he's been picking up injuries slowly as well and still very young. But yeah, Saka has to take it for now. He's been doing it, at the top level, going for a league title. Eze, if he plays for maybe a bigger club with high expectations, and if he continues doing it, then a conversation can be told. But Saka's a different player to Eze in a way as well, because he's playing out wide. Eze is more central down the left rather than down the right. But yeah, I think they're both fantastic talent. I'll just say that. I mean, for England, Gareth Southgate has no excuses. He's got abundance of talent to go and actually achieve something. So yeah, it's a massive positive there.
Excellent. Great questions. And thank you. Sorry we didn't get to them all. There were some brilliant questions for you, D, that we've not got to tonight, but we have run over. We talked loads about whether it's Palace, Newcastle, Tonali, lineups, the lot. And so therefore we'll leave it there for tonight. But just before we go, predictions. Let's go around robin. Chris, at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, what do you think the score is going to be at St. James's Park, mate?
There won't be a game tomorrow at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. I don't know what.
No.
Maybe I'm gonna.
Saturday. My bad. I'm so desperate for football. I want it tomorrow. I want it right now. Like
it'll be 3 p.m. as well. Is it 5 p.m.?
3 p.m. I think.
3 p.m. mate.
Classic.
Yeah, I don't know what game. I don't know what game we're looking at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, but
no. I said 5 p.m. at the end of the game because it's the end of the game.
Oh yeah.
That's why I said 5 p.m. Sorry, I just want the game tomorrow. That's why I said tomorrow. I was thinking it was Friday, but look, I'm excited. I want football back. But 5 p.m. at the end of the game Saturday. Let me get that right. Chris, what do you think the score is going to be?
You see, I was thinking about this earlier on in the show, and I was thinking I had 2-1 in my head. I had 2-1 in my head to Newcastle all the way through. And then when we got the lineups up and, Dee was talking about the attacking threat and everything, I'm thinking a Palace, do I fancy Palace to score now? I'm not sure. I think as well with the whole 0-0 thing, I expect goals now. So, no, do you know what? I'm just going to stick with 2-1. Because that's what I thought all the way through. So I'm going to say 2-1 Newcastle.
Okay. 2-1 Newcastle. D, what you going for is the opposition?
0-0. I'll take it. 0-0. I think we'll try to frustrate you as much as we can. We'll try to play for the clean sheet as well. Our whole setup. And then in attack, I don't think we've got much. Maybe as you attack us, if there's spaces in behind, maybe we could create 1 or 2 chances. But I do think it'll be a tight game. As I said, if we have Lerm and Decore there, our midfield is stronger and they add a bit more defensive solidity to what we have already. So yeah, I'm gonna go for a 0-0, but it could either go 2-0, 3-0 Newcastle as well, depending on how early you score.
Yeah, I'm going for a 2-0 Newcastle. I think we'll continue the good. I think with the players coming up for Newcastle, I know there's players back for Palace, but having those players back and having 2 weeks for them to get fit, Joe Linton, Isaac, Wilson, Gordon back from suspension, I think the players will be hungry, and I'm hoping they're going to be hungry because 3 points on the board is what we need to build and pushes up the league. So I'm going to stick with a 2-0 Newcastle. Right, Dr. Doom, Mr. Keith Roll, 00 Stato, what have you got for us this week on your prediction screen?
Yep, I think there's a lot of different angles that you can take this one. I think one of the things will be the West Ham performance, where I wasn't happy with that performance. I think there'll be a lot of sort of emphasis on that as well, and particularly the international break for the players to be fired up. So I think there'll be that element coming in that Newcastle will be fired up. I think they'll be fired up by what's went on off the pitch as well, so they'll be at it. Hopefully the atmosphere won't be too nervy as well because of what's went off the pitch, and hopefully that doesn't feed in the players. So we need the crowd as well to be full into it as well for a buoyant atmosphere on the terraces. But I think Palace will be hard to break down for sure. We've seen them get some brilliant results this season against Man United at Old Trafford as well. So they're going to be hard to break down. One of the best defensive sides, certainly, if not the best, in that mid-table sort of area, just pushing top 10 area. So I think it's going to be a tough game to break down. If they are switched on, if all the officials and if Newcastle are at their full best, I can see a result here. Hopefully, Newcastle are always liable to concede, but I'm actually going for this.
1-0.
Sounds realistic. I could see that happening as well. Yeah.
It's going to end the 3-0 with a 1-0. It will be a game of few chances, and it could go either way, but I think it'll narrowly go to Newcastle on this occasion.
Go for the win. I tell you what, he's pushing the boat out. I like it. And he's looking to continue that run of getting the predictions nailed on. And it's something we can work on, Jamie.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As a team and see if we can work on that. That's for sure. Yes, Doom, Jason Scott is approval of your prediction. But look, the predictions are there. They're in the bag. We'll keep an eye on those things. But look, massive thanks to Dee for joining us from Back from the Nest podcast. I've just said the podcast there, but look, where can we find you on socials, on YouTube? Talk to us about where we can find you from a Palace perspective, mate.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. D Palace for my personal account on Twitter, and we've done our opposition preview on our channel as well. At Back of the Nest on YouTube, where Pete gives his perspective on the game as a Newcastle fan. So check that out if you're interested on that. And yeah, just normal Palace content and Back of the Nest everywhere on your usual social media platforms. Just Palace fan channel, just talking about everything literally related to Palace. So yeah, make sure to check it out as well, people.
Brilliant channel. So make sure you give them a subscribe. And of course, you can see D on the 12th man with Potts and the crew weekly, causing havoc with many other fans of the fan channels in the 12th man. It is entertaining watch, that is for sure. I'd actually like Palace to be in the European positions so you can come on to
that'd be chaos. That'd be chaos. That'd be like,
just be sitting back and just giving the eyebrows.
We'll see. We'll see. Take a game at a time. We'll see where we are.
Definitely. But look, just before we head out, massive thanks to our sponsors, theradiatorshed.com. Thank you for all your support and the team for everything you do. Put D and Keith, although he's trying his best to avoid it, in prison right now. And we have to say massive thank you.
Bond.
Yeah. Of course, they provide top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity. All designs are manufactured in Italy. Aluminium rads are very environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat source pumps. They offer a home survey and will install if required. Some quality there as well. And let's not forget bathroom design, H2O. Massive thanks to those and the Northeast's largest suppliers of Villeroy and Botch bathroomware. Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established, run by the family. So make sure that you get down to the showroom on 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate in Gateshead, and support Russ and the team with regards to the bathrooms. And we know how good a quality some of these bathrooms are. I'm reminded weekly by my wife to make sure I'm earning enough money to put this bathroom together for us in my house. So yeah, I'm working towards that right now. Jordan and the team at Newcastle World, Jordan, Liam, and of course, working alongside them is Dom. Make sure you scan the QR code there and scan to sign up for free newsletters, all related to NUFC. And look, we've had loads of member uptakes to become a loaded ultra. So make sure if you haven't already, click that blue button. You have to be on a laptop in order to create a membership. It doesn't work on a mobile phone, but we've had loads of uptake with memberships. We've got members draw. We've got the man right next to me, Mr. Chris Hall, that is the king of memberships, that is on the prowl and working towards our next membership draw. So make sure you get involved as well. And of course, massive thanks to you all. We're heading towards 7K subscribers. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do. And thank you for all your support. Guys, we're going to leave it there. Massive thanks to D. Big up to yourself. Make sure you give him a subscribe to his channel, Back of the Nest. Thank you to everyone in the chat. You guys have been amazing. And of course, this show wouldn't be able to work the way it does without the main man right next to me. Me and him work together seamlessly alongside Richie and Daz, and it's a pleasure always to chat to you boys. And Keith, your stats are outstanding. The intro has gone down well. There's lots of talk about it. So
Come up with an album out. We've got an EP there now with a few songs.
We might be on album levels. You are not wrong. But of course, we want 3 points. Let's get behind Tonali. If he plays on Saturday, let's support our boys as we always do. Fingers crossed for 3 points. Best of luck to D in the rest of the season. Hopefully, you will topple the likes of Man U, Chelsea, and all the rest of them.
And West Ham.
Top of the table. And West Ham as well, of course. And you're up there alongside us by the end of the season. But I'm sure we'll get you back on in the return fixture. That's for sure. That's us, boys. We're out. And of course, Chris, I'll let you end the show. Just before I say, we do love playing away.
How'd you like that?
Good man.
How you like?